Hey friend, Roderick Christofferson here again with another first listen review, and this is one that I've been looking forward to babbling about for a few weeks now. I heard it was coming out, but before we get into all that, just want to ask you to like, share, and subscribe to keep this music alive. I started on already to keep this music alive. That's what we do here. We talk about bands we love, artists, whatever, what they're up to, what they're doing. Do a lot of album reviews just because I love buying new music, and this is one that I was really looking forward to. Like I already said, it's Gramm and his new album called Released, and I say that with a little bit of hesitation because it's new to us, but it's stuff that's been around for a long time. Just kind of unfinished business. I don't know if that's why it's called Released, just because it's finally released, like stuff he started way back in the 80s, apparently. And a lot of this was back when he was doing his first couple solo albums, Ready or Not and Long Hard Look. And then he also had a band there that people forget about, I think, called Shadow King, that had Vivian Campbell on guitar. And off the top of my head, I can't remember who was playing on drums. I forget, case of the olds again. But anyway, he had that band there, and that's actually, I just listened to that CD probably about a year or so ago, because I just hadn't listened to it in a while. I was talking about it, with a couple friends of mine, and I was like, I hadn't listened to that in a long time, so I got that one out there not too long ago. But in case you don't know, I've mentioned it a few different times. One of the things I do is I play in a foreigner tribute band, so for me this is kind of cool that this has finally come out. I was lucky enough that I got Tony Franklin's a pass of his signed. A friend of mine was actually at a show and got that for me. I thought it was pretty cool. And, it's kind of cool that somebody was thinking of me at that point, and Tony Franklin's been like one of my, inspirations. I don't play fretless bass, but I've tried it. It just isn't my thing. It's not my, it just wasn't meant to be with me, but I really look up to Tony Franklin. He's an excellent player, and he's playing with Lou now, that's why I mentioned that. He's been with him for a little bit. But anyway, basically what this album is like I mentioned, it's songs that just never got finished. It wasn't, some people, I've read a couple things, and I saw a couple people talking about this already. They're saying it's just, well, if there were songs that weren't good enough for the original albums, what do we care about them now? And that's not totally the case. I've seen a couple interviews with Lou where he's talking about it. It was just, these were the songs that just didn't get finished. They record about 15 songs per album, is what he said. And they just ended up with some that they just don't get finished. A lot of bands work that way. They go in with a whole bunch, and they have some that just, they can't record them all at exactly the same time. So they work on them and whatever ones they're concentrating on at that point in time. And, if there's deadlines on albums, which, there are, especially were back in those days, they just didn't have time to finish them. So that's the way he's describing it. And, there's a few songs he said, that needed like a guitar solo, or they needed some harmony vocals, or they recorded like a verse or two and didn't finish up the last verse. So that's the way he was describing it. And so when I got this and I went into it, I kind of had the idea of what I love those albums from. Everyone I just mentioned, I love those albums. I remember driving around, especially listening to Ready or Not. And I remember a friend of mine had a paper route, like a rural route where you'd have to like drive around in a car and deliver it. And it took like 3 or 4 hours to do. And I remember when Long Hard Look came out, we had that CD, well, it was a cassette back then, but we had that just playing over and over and over and over. We tried to hit all the super high notes that he'd hit, especially on the song Just Between You and Me, which was, I think, the only single off of that one. But anyway, so I kind of knew what it was going to sound like going into this, and had, general idea. And I had already heard the song Young Love, which is the lead-off track. I actually did listen to that. I cheated. I don't like doing that because sometimes I feel like it ruins like what I may anticipate. Sometimes you hear things, singles, and it's not interesting to you, and it kind of ruins you from buying the album. And so I try to stay away from that. But I did cheat. Really like that song. And that one's got the one with Vivian Campbell playing guitar on that one. So I don't know if that was from the Shadow King sessions or not, but a lot of that stuff sounded a lot alike. I tell you, his 2 solo albums and Shadow King, you could probably intertwine all those songs with each other, and you wouldn't be able to tell which one was Shadow King and which one wasn't. They're very similar. And Bruce Turgeon, who was, wrote a lot of stuff. I think he was actually in Foreigner for a little bit, bass player with him for like years. Also plays guitar, but that was kind of what he was known for. Wrote most of this stuff with Lou, so that's kind of where all this came from. So anyway, that song Young Love definitely had that feel, exactly what I thought it was going to sound like from that era. No big surprises there. Really enjoyed that. And that was one that you could definitely tell it was the vocals recorded back, whenever the sessions were for back then. And that kind of goes on for a little bit. I'm trying to remember now. It was Long Gone or Heart and Soul. I've actually listened to the song about 5 times through, and I'm still. It's one little thing I will say, I guess, out of the gate here. I'm trying to be honest in these reviews. I do like only doing reviews on things I like, so I'll get that out of the way. I really did like this. However, there are a few things that stuck out a little bit, and part of it was, like I was just kind of getting to, is I listened to this thing 5 times through in a row. I still have a hard time remember which song was which, because there's a lot of very sameness from like tracks 2 through 7, actually 2 through 6, I'll say, because track 7 is actually a remake of an older song. So tracks 2 through 6 are all very similar sounding, mid-tempo rock. The one that's a little bit slower in there. That's why I was trying to remember what it was, but that one's definitely a new vocal. It's definitely Lou singing and sounding a lot. I mean, and I'm gonna get a lot of crap for this, I know, because I said something like this about Peter Criss. He sounded different. Well, yeah, obviously he sounds different. He's a lot older nowadays. Been singing his entire life. He had the whole brain tumor thing. I actually saw him live right after he came back out and started playing again after the brain tumor, and he still sounded pretty darn good. You could tell he hadn't been singing for a little bit, but he was still hitting the notes. He was still out there doing it, and you can hear that he's struggling a little bit on some parts, and which I thought was really strange, because when I got to track 7, that's definitely a newer vocal as well, and you can tell he's having a little every now and then, and it was the notes he was having trouble with, or just were not strong, weren't the high notes, which you would think is what was happening. It was kind of like the mid-range stuff, where he, his singing like lives and breathes, and this is really amazing. That would seem to be where there was some shakiness going on, and the high notes in a lot of these songs he was nailing, like no trouble at all. And then every now and then you hear a little bit of a strain, and it's just strange to me, because not only that, but I don't know what microphone they use or what production techniques they use. It didn't mix well with the newer stuff. It didn't. It was a very sharp contrast. Not just the tone of his voice from age. It was just the recording of it was a lot different. It was a lot thicker. Muddier sounding. Actually, it wasn't as crystal clear as you would think it should be for something that's being produced new in this day and age. And with the amount of takes as you can do and use to get a good take, and I know because I've worked with people that really are not great singers. I'm not a great singer, so I can probably get away with saying this. You can take a great singer like Lou and definitely get some good takes. You can get enough good takes. So I don't know. It almost feels like they just kind of said, yeah, let's go in there and do a take, and that's it. It's kind of the feel I got. So I'm being a little harsh, but it's noticeable. I mean, you can't shy away from it. You can hear it and still enjoy it and love it, but it's very noticeable. So that being said, the song, they're good. There's a lot of that finger picking stuff, like in Midnight Blue, how that song starts. So I have a feeling they knew that they had a really cool song and sound with that, and they were trying different songs also with that same style. There's like 4 different songs on here that use that exact same style. And then we get to the unplugged version of True Blue Love, which is the one I was saying. That one, I kind of feel it was a piano and his vocal. I don't know. That one is probably the one that maybe should not have been included. I don't know. I could have dealt with 9 songs instead of 10 with that being on there. I know I'm being mean. I'm being a little bit harsh, but it just is what it is. I can't get away from that, and I feel like I know people are going to be very mad at me for saying that, but it's just, it's like I said, it's just our opinions as well. I know I'm like trying to like not to like say too much bad about that, but it's our opinions. Some people love stuff, some people hate stuff. I'm not gonna say I hate it, but it definitely was the weak point of the album, and it was like right there in the middle of track 7. However, it does take a pretty good turn from that point on. Deep Side of Love was okay, but Time Heals the Pain, another great song. That was actually probably my favorite one on the album, actually. Very upbeat. Lou just singing like, and it's kind of right after you hear him having some issues, not being able to quite get things strong. He does that, and it's just effortlessly the Lou that we're used to hearing, right up there, nailing stuff like just he was born doing it, and it's just, I don't know. Anyway, and it goes into word gets around the final song, also another cool upbeat one. That was a good, strong way to end the album. And I'll leave it at that. I just don't want to like make too many Lou fans upset, and by just saying the way things are now, it's just that's the way things are. But the album itself, I did enjoy. I actually liked it, and I will listen to it again. There's probably one song that I'll skip from this point on. The rest of it is definitely good. It's a good addition to the collection. It would have fit in well, all these finished songs. I just wish there may have been a little bit more variety in the tempo and the style. Like there wasn't like anything that I thought maybe should not have been included on the earlier albums as far as the songs themselves go. So anyway, that being said, feel free to tear me up in the comments about what I'd said about a couple of those songs, or maybe you agree, I don't know. But either way, feel free to share what you think. If you've heard the album, what do you guys think of it? And hopefully he'll do something else. I hate to think that he's just going to give it up. If you love what you're doing, you're out there doing it, people are showing up and seeing it and having fun, then keep doing it. Why not? So until next time, we will see you.